Yeah, hard to mess up after that intro. Um, but I'm glad to be here, guys. Love is how I like to begin and end everything. Attention, attention, attention. It's the most valuable thing we can offer anyone. And they have some robots in the room that will steal your attention. And I am here to give you all of mine, so I would like all of yours. And I'm going to present some perspectives today. And I want to invite you to consider how they apply to your life, not how they don't. Because very often our dismissal is avoidance in disguise. It's the things we don't want to look at. A mind can be a beautiful servant or a dangerous master. And about 12 years ago, give or take, I did what you call a Vipassana retreat, where I spent 10 days in absolute silence. No speaking, no devices, no books, no pen, no paper. I sat on a cushion for 10 days, and I ate and I slept. And those 10 days, 5 of those 10 days were absolute torture, the first 5 days. All I could think about was girlfriend cheating on me, business going bankrupt, all my friends having a good time while I sat there on a cushion in my 20s. There was even a war that would prevent me from getting back home. Now, none of this actually happened, but in my mind it did. And it created for me this experience that was agonizing. And about halfway through those 5 days, there was a guide, and he could talk, I couldn't talk. And he said something that guided me to realize that all of these thoughts that were plaguing my mind were based on fear. And once I could see and acknowledge where these fears, where these thoughts were coming from, they had less power over me. I now had a relationship to them. So the second 5 days of that experience were as harmonious as sitting on a cushion could possibly be. And I think silence is really powerful. And that Vipassana experience, 10 days of silence, I would recommend to anyone and everyone. But I promised myself I would never do it again. So happens that things change. And about 30 days ago, I walked into a room to spend 10 days in the absolute absence of light. Solitary days, like Vipassana, but on steroids. So me, myself, and my mind, this was the room. I had a toilet, I had a shower, I had a bed. This is a little light-proof window where I would be brought food twice a day. 10 days. That made 10 days of silence look like a walk in a park. Let me tell you. And I have to add, I came out on day 3. I walked out of that room on day 3. And those 3 days felt like 3 months. And I faced fears I never even knew I had. I faced the fear of death, face to face. I faced the fear of psychosis. I faced the fear of, will I ever see again? Will I ever be able to see? I faced the fear of not being able to be of service to the world and being swept off to some la-la land. I faced the fear of never seeing my loved ones again. But here's what I learned about fear in that room. I learned that fear's greatest worry, ironically enough, is not being able to love or be loved. Oh, this is what the room looked like, by the way. Forgot that part. The room looked like this every moment of every breath of every second, except for the times when they were flashing, strobing lights which of course happened here. Eyes open, eyes closed, flashing lights. Couldn't even walk, couldn't even move, flashing lights. What the hell is going on? Full-on hallucination. The ironic thing about fear is that its greatest worry is not being able to love or be loved. Now, here's a few things I've learned about the mind. It's a teaching from yoga, mind is king, and it dictates your reality. Your mind shapes your reality in every single aspect. If I told you that these walls were red, you would probably call me colorblind or mad. But what if I grew up learning that that was the color red? Nothing you present to me could make me believe otherwise unless I choose to believe otherwise. That's how powerful this is. If I took this stage and you thought to yourself, well, that's some yogi, mumbo, jumbo, space cadet, he have nothing to offer me, then you're probably sitting down there looking for ways to disregard everything I say and justify what you chose to believe. That's the narrative you created. That's how powerful the mind is. Fear, anxiety, and stress live in our mind. We create it. And if we feed those narratives, and if we can't identify that, yo, this is fear, this is not real, I am making this up, this is not actually happening, then we now have a relationship to it. I'm not telling you this stress and this anxiety will never come back. But when you have a relationship to it, it doesn't own you. You can converse with it. When something happens in your mind, the emotions it creates is just as real. For those of us who have ever thought your girlfriend is cheating on you for a moment, that gut feeling, that anxiety, that's real pain. Anything. When I was in that room, all these thoughts, there was actually a war happening. I experienced in that dark room, I swear to God, I was going to be kidnapped and I would not get out that room. So much so that I had a blindfold, a light-proof blindfold, and I had to walk to the door, put it on, and just crack the door, just to make sure I wasn't locked in. Mind is powerful. But your mind is your ride and die, ride or die. You can't escape your mind. No way out. I like to talk about the mind as an eternal marriage, but there's no separation or divorce. So I would recommend you make friends with your mind and you get to know your mind, just as you would in any intimate relationship. But to create that intimacy, you have to listen, right? You have to sit with your mind. You have to be with your partner. You know, I just want to divert a little bit. When I hear people talk about meditation, often people are like, I can't meditate. I can't shut my mind up. Would you ever go home and tell your spouse to shut up? Probably won't end well. So meditation or getting to know your mind is simply looking, it's simply listening, spending time with your mind without any distractions, no Netflix, no phone, none of that. You can't befriend your mind and create a relationship with your mind. Your mind is one of the most powerful things in the entire world. Imagine it like a machine, but we don't spend time to read the manual. We don't even look into the mind. Some people can't even be with their own mind for 10 minutes. Imagine that. How are we going to create a better world if we have no relationship up here? Your mind can rob you of your purpose. And we're going to look at how, if your purpose is creating a better world, you cannot do that without a relationship to your mind. Purpose. Anybody here know what a purpose is? Since I was told I do have to rush through the presentation, anybody want to vocally maybe shout out what their purpose is? No? Why you exist? Sure. Figure out why you exist. Anybody else? To serve. Anybody else? All beautiful. Your purpose right now is to listen to me speak. And all of that stuff is beautiful. Create a better world, that's beautiful. And I'm not saying this from a self-righteous, egotistical point of view. Your purpose is to be present. And right now I am speaking to you. And this is your purpose. You cannot manifest a purpose if you do not have the ability to be present in each and every moment. So here are a few things about purpose. Every moment holds its own purpose. Every single moment. And if you get obsessed with a larger purpose, you're going to miss the opportunity and the purpose in each and every moment. Every individual moment, you have an opportunity to impact somebody's life in everything you do. And I want to use a little analogy here. If I want to get to a door, say a door is a better world, I could beeline straight for a door. A better world, I'm done. Or if I take my time, step by step, purpose by purpose, moment by moment, I might have all these conversations along the way. I might change someone's life. I might learn a thing or two. And if I really was in my purpose, guess what? It wouldn't just be me by that door. It would be all 200 of us by that door. You can't think your purpose into being. You can only be present to it. Your purpose is to be present. You can't think what your purpose is. And get this, there is an intelligence that knows better than we do. There is an intelligence that dreams bigger than we do. I don't care what you call that intelligence. But there is something. And sometimes our dream of a better world might be limited. But if you are present and listening to your purpose and following along, together we might create a bigger, better world than we could ever dream. Anybody ever asked this question? I hope so, because your paper statement is now create a better world. So I'm hoping that at some point in your life, you've asked, how can I change the world? I have. And there's an environmentalist, her name is Jane Goodall, and she says, you're asking the wrong question. That's not the question we should be asking. The question we should be asking is, how am I changing the world? Because how can I change the world is out there. How am I changing the world? In every moment, with every action, word, and thought, you change the world. And if we are so obsessed with this bigger purpose or asking the question, how can I change the world? You might not realize that you're actually having a negative impact on the people around you. We have to be willing to look at how are we living? What are we doing? What impact are we having in this moment? Rather than being obsessed with this big, grand vision. Vision is good. Keep it there. But be present to your purpose. Inspiring better choices for a better world. What does this mean for ANSA McAl, all of this stuff? Well, I could just offer you a few suggestions. One is listen and understand rather than assume. We do this all the time in our daily lives in conversation. We assume we know what someone thinks or how they feel or why they did something. Or what they want, or what they need. Don't assume. Listen and understand one another. But to do that, you have to be present. You can't listen to reply to somebody. We do that all the time in a conversation and you done figure out your reply already. Listen and understand where somebody is, where they're coming from. Understand their fears and concerns. Pay attention and question everything. There's a book called Sapiens. Some of you might have read it. I can't pronounce the author's name. I won't attempt to. I'll butcher it. But he points out that because something has been done for hundreds of years doesn't make it right or even efficient. So pay attention to your procedures and what is happening. Is it actually working? Is it creating a better environment and a better world? And for who? Because you might create a better world for 100 people, but have a negative impact on 1,000. So pay attention, question everything, and be open to new ideas and suggestions. And identify where you can be better. We live in a world where we love to broadcast our success and everyone else's flaws. Your growth and transformation is not in your success. It's in your flaws. It's in the areas of your workforce, your colleagues, your lives, your relationship, where you could actually do better. So be open to being shown where you can do better and how, even by other people. And you're planting seeds. Every action, every word, every thought is a seed you're planting. What seeds are you planting in your lives and in your organization, in your workforce, in our society? Are you cultivating compassion, understanding, inspiration, love, inclusivity? Or are you making people feel judged, separate, other? If you have the courage to be present, you might just discover that you're having negative influences and impacts on the people around you. That maybe if you took a different approach, a different way, said something a little differently, that you might get through and you might actually create the change you want to see. So I want to talk about identity, because a lot of the time in our actions, our words, and our thoughts, we are caught up in identity, which lives in the mind. That is ego. That is the I and me. And the mind's automatic go-to is my desires, my needs, and my wants. And if you don't have a relationship to your mind, that is going to become your unconscious priority. And you won't even realize that your search for your needs and desires to fulfill those are impacting other people negatively. So I want to highlight the identity crisis of the mind. I believe that the entire world is in an identity crisis. We are born into it. You see, from the time we're born, we are told that I am my name and my body. I am told that I am Troy and this is my body. That is not a narrative I buy into. I leave it to you to decide. But after I leave my body, I will exist. I am not my body. Because if I am my body, that does a few, well, the first thing, we'll get to that in a little bit, but it makes us separate. I don't believe that we are. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But as we go on, and we're born, and I am Troy, I am my body, I grow up. And as we grow up and we go about our lives, we get different aspects of identity. Career, opinion, religion, mood, call it. If I am a yoga teacher, that means that, well, right now I'm speaking, so do I even exist? If I am a speaker, I can't be something else. If we get attached to these aspects of our identity, it's going to limit us. On the verge of the pandemic, if you were a teacher and all of a sudden you can't teach anymore, well, you feel like death is at your doorstep because you're so attached to your identity as a teacher that's being ripped from you, right? So what is your blank? I am what? What are you? I invite you to look at that and create a relationship to it. Because all of these identities will feed your needs and desires. And if you don't have a relationship to them, they will become priority unconsciously. Ego lives in the mind and is obsessed with all things I and me. Mind is king of everything. I mentioned that earlier, but breath is king of the mind. The one thing that can tame your mind is your breath. And your mind creates your reality. How is your breathing, right? I was talking to Miles before this, and it's not a question people ask. This should be the first question a doctor asks you when you walk in a room. How is your breathing? But because breath comes automatic to us when we're born, you come out of the womb and all of a sudden you could breathe. We don't think of it. We focus on what we eat. We focus on how much water we drink. We focus on how much exercise we do. You can live quite a while, maybe 30 days, 2 weeks without water or food. You breathe 23,000 times a day. Most people 25. And you can't live more than 3 or 4 minutes without breathing. So what do you think has more impact? What do you think carries more weight? How does breath work? When we inhale, we pull air into our bodies. True or false? True? If you think this is true, put your hand up, please. Real big. High. It is a trick question. That is false. That is false. I thought that I learned to breathe at 27 years old, by the way, 3 years after. 3 years after I started teaching yoga. It was even yoga that taught me how to breathe. So, let's cover some essential concepts. And you guys all work at ANSA, so you are clearly brilliant. So this should not be hard for you to understand, right? Your breath lives in your thoracic cavity, not your belly. You know how we often hear belly breath? People talk about belly breath. Cool, I understand why we talk about the belly breath. But it's essential to understand your breath, you cannot breathe into your belly. For you to get air in your belly, I would have to stick you with a knife. The only reason your abdominal cavity expands is because your diaphragm, which is the main muscle of breathing, descends into your abdominal cavity when you breathe. The abdominal cavity is like a water balloon. If you press on the top, it'll bulge. That's the only reason this expands. This is where your breath happens. From your diaphragm up to your chest and your sternum, right? That is your thoracic cavity. Volume and air pressure are inversely related. I know you all are brilliant, but I'll just take a moment to explain, right? If I have a box, and inside that box is a set air pressure. When I expand the volume of that box, the air pressure decreases. Good? If I contract the volume of that box, the air pressure increases. Yeah? Good. Gases move from high pressure to low pressure. Law of nature. So this is how breathing happens. I'll take this off just so you all could see, right? Here's how breathing happens. You could glance at this for a little bit, but then bring your eyes back to me. This is your thoracic cavity. When your diaphragm descends into your abdomen and your sternum lifts and your ribcage gets wider and you expand front to back, you increase the volume of your thoracic cavity. When you increase the volume of your thoracic cavity, the air pressure inside of you decreases. When the air pressure inside of you decreases, it means that the air pressure outside is higher than the air pressure inside. So air moves into you to create balance. We do not breathe. We do not pull air into our body. We create space to be breathed by an external force. And the same force breathing me is the same force breathing you. So here are a few factors that affect your breath, right? I'm going to breathe shortly, and then I'll wrap. First one is stress and anxiety. Your mind, your body, and your breath are all directly related. So when you are under stress or anxiety or worry, anybody here ever felt stressed or anxious? Yeah. Your body, when that happens, your body goes into a state of fight or flight. It starts to contract. When it contracts, you can't expand. You can't create space in your body to receive breath. And breath is one of the only things that can release and relieve stress and anxiety. One-dimensional breathing restricts shape change. We always hear, if you ask somebody, where do you breathe? They might tell you their belly. They might tell you their chest. If you're lucky, they tell you both. But what about your rib cage? Your rib cage should move sideways like gills of a fish. Your back body should expand and broaden. We create space in 3 and 4 dimensions like a cylinder, not just up and down. So when we sit to breathe in a little bit, imagine that happening in your body, right? Physical tightness. This is one of my favorite because people come to me all the time, especially athletes, and they say, my muscles are tight, my back hurting, I'm getting injured. Nobody ever comes to say, my muscles are tight, I'm not breathing properly, I'm emotionally reactive. But your entire body is like a body glove of muscle, connective tissue, and fascia. All of your muscles are connected. If your hamstrings are tight, your quads are tight, your calves are tight, it is pulling down on your entire body. It is restricting the ability of your thoracic cavity to expand and receive breath. So then it's a cycle, right? If you can't relax your body, everything's going to go whack. You're going to breathe quickly, body's going to get anxious and tight. So here's what I recommend. When you feel that happening, whatever you need to do, relax your body. If you need to lie down on the floor, turn off your lights. In the office, place one hand on your chest and one hand on your belly, and just relax for a few minutes. Do it. Because if your body's not relaxed, you're not going to be able to breathe the way you should be breathing. This is my favorite slide of the entire presentation. Actually, if I only have 1 minute to talk to anybody, I talk about this, right? My whole life I've been close to God and Spirit, and I'm not going to attempt to tell you what God looks like or if it has a form or anything at all. Your relationship to God is yours. For generations, people have told us who or what God is. I would never allow anyone to tell me who or what God is, and I would never do that for you. This is your understanding of God. But something happened for me at some point in my life after practicing yoga for a little bit that brought me closer, deeper in my relationship to God. And I discovered that the word spirit comes from the Latin word spiritus. Anybody could guess what it means? Check this out. The word spirit comes from the word spiritus, which means to breathe. That, for me, changed my life. It changed my yoga practice. And I can't tell you what this means. I'm lingering here so you could really soak it in. I can't tell you what that means, but I will tell you what it means to me, some of the things it means to me. It means that we are connected. Breath is what connects us. We're on the verge of a pandemic. This might not be a good point to bring up, but the air that was inside of me is inside of all of you. The air I was breathing an hour ago has passed through every one of you. You know how we like to say blood is thicker than water? Is that what we say? Well, spirit, blood or nothing. Spirit is what connects us to everything. Breath is what connects us to everything. It makes sense to me that breath would be some form of divine intelligence. I also have come to believe, I know this might sound like crazy stuff, but I have come to believe in my relationship to breath that breath carries a divine intelligence. It is God's direct way of communicating with each one of us. If we would just sit and listen, there are things that come through breath that come to us, and we have no idea where it came from. Just consider, something to consider. This is my favorite. If God is inside of me in some form, in my breath, making love to me 20,000 times a day, then consider that prayer is not something we do. Prayer is not something you go to church and do, or go to temple and do, or go to mosque and do. Prayer is something we are. Every action, every word and thought is a prayer. What are we praying for when we don't even realize we're praying? That's a powerful question. Because it's easy to say, I'm going to go to mosque, I'm going to say my prayers, and I know what I'm praying for. And then I step out of mosque, and all of a sudden, your mother's on the blah. What are we praying for when we don't even realize we're praying? It also means to me that we are not as separate as we have been led to believe. That I am not my body. And my name is not Troy. That's just what I've been called for the last 42 years. It also means that God is much closer than you could ever imagine. So now, you guys ready to breathe a little bit? Yeah? Okay. Do I have how much time do we have, guys? Am I like tight for time or about a few minutes? All right, good. So I'm going to teach you guys a practice called Viloma. Pretty much what we're going to do, we'll just do Viloma 1. Forget Viloma 2 today. You could do Viloma 2 when you go home, right? Viloma 1 means we are going to split the inhale in 3 parts from a bottom up, followed by one long exhale. The 3 parts of the breath are this. Lower part, diaphragm descends into your abdomen. Feel that happen, feel the breath in your lower back. The middle part of the breath is the rib cage expands like gills of a fish, and the side body gets long. The top part of the breath is the chest is going to lift, the sternum expand, and the back body expand. You'll get that? 3 parts of the breath. Lower, middle, top. Simple enough? Okay, here's the hardest part. Place your feet on the floor, sit up tall, and close your eyes. And I've seen we have some people virtually. I could see you, right? Good. Close your eyes for me and just sit. If you're not comfortable closing your eyes, you could look at a point in front of you. But if you can't close your eyes, that would be great. And what I want you to do is just look at the breath. That's how any relationship begins, is by listening, by understanding. Just look at the breath. If your mind is busy, acknowledge that. If your body keeps moving, acknowledge that. And how we're going to begin is with one long, smooth breath together before anything. So I want you to come to the bottom of your exhale and pause. And inhale for a count of 4. Pause. Exhale for a count of 4. Remember, you have to create space for your breath. Now, come to the bottom of your exhale. Get all the air out of your body. Draw your belly to your spine. Pause. Inhale into your lower abdomen and diaphragm. Pause. Inhale into your rib cage and side body. Pause. Inhale into your chest and back body. Pause. Now take one long exhale from the top down. Get all the air out of your body. All the air out, all the air out, all the air out. Now release your breath. Now just let the breath return. I'm just going to say something here that might land for some of you guys. You are in a relationship with your breath. And some of you guys look like you're on a couch watching TV with a bag of potato chips next to your partner. Bring more awareness to how you are sitting. We're going to go one more round. Come to the bottom of your exhale and pause. Inhale into your lower abdomen. Pause. Inhale into your rib cage and side body. Pause. Inhale into your chest, sternum, upper back. One long exhale. And release. Just allow your breath to return. Keep your eyes closed for a moment. For some of you, I'm guessing this is difficult and you're realizing, maybe you're discovering new aspects to your breath. Maybe you're realizing that, wow, breathing isn't easy. I want you just to look and feel for a moment. Your breath and your mind, they want to be seen. They are the most powerful things you have aspect. Any relationship or influence to. Gently open your eyes for me. So I just want to point out, if you wanted to go home and do Viloma 2, you would just reverse, right? You would do one long inhale, 3-part exhale. We do have videos of these online on our online platform, so maybe we'll get ANSA involved and get you guys access to it. But I want to just connect and end with a few things, right? A relationship with your breath and your mind will decrease anxiety and stress, enable you to be present and rediscover your purpose in every moment. If not, your mind is going to take you a million miles away, and you'll never really be present to the opportunities in front of you. Opportunities to create a better world, I might add. It gives you freedom to respond to life rather than emotionally reacting to life. When the mind is in charge, we are reactive. You slap me in the face and I punch you back. When we have a relationship to breath and mind, you slap me in the face and I do this. It creates for me space and freedom to respond consciously to life rather than reacting emotionally to life. It allows you to extend your sense of identity, deepen your relationships, and better serve the collective because you now feel more connected to people around you. And it deepens your relationship to your understanding of God. It will contribute to creating a better you and a better world. This is me. This is not my last slide. These are not my last words, but I don't want to end on promotion. But this is me. These are my handles. You can follow me if you connect to any of this, and I want to ask your help because I've spent the last 3 years writing a book. I've worked with the editor in New York, and I have no interest in self-publishing. I seek a publishing deal internationally. But the first thing they ask is, well, what's your following? How much followers you have? You could have 100,000 followers. They even need to see your book. They'll give you a deal. So if you connect to what I present or what I have to offer, these are my handles. You could share them, follow them, join the email list. But ignore that now. I have one more thing I want to share before I close. I was born into a life of privilege in many ways. My last name is Hadeed. I'm light-skinned. I am male. I am straight. I could go on and on and on. Growing up, there was a point where I didn't even want to say my last name because I knew what came with it. I didn't even want to say where I grew up. I would say Point Kumana instead of Goodwood Park. True story. But you see, here's what I discovered. That if you're ashamed of your privilege, you can't own it. It owns you. And when your privilege owns you, it doesn't benefit anybody but yourself. But when you can create a relationship with your privilege and acknowledge it, then it comes with a responsibility. And that responsibility is to serve a collective and serve something bigger than yourself. Now, we always talk about the bigger labels of privilege. But everyone in this room, whether you were born into privilege or you worked your way into privilege, we are all privileged. Our privilege is our advantage. And there are many ways in which we have advantages over others. Now, I'm going to just close with reading you two passages from my book before I wrap. People often ask if there are days when I wake up and feel disheartened, disconnected, defeated, and doubt whether the human experience is even something I want to be a part of. The answer is yes. There are days when I look at what is happening in our world and simply would rather not be a part of it. There's oppression, inhumanity, genocide, environmental disregard, poverty, discrimination, a lust for money and power, pandemics, corruption, and starvation. People are being exploited, suffering, and dying unnecessarily every day. Then you can add bills to pay, mortgages, responsibilities, expectations, and a subtle everyday filter of narcissism on top of all of it. There are days when it becomes very overwhelming, and I think there's no way out of this. Maybe I'll just disappear. I never thought of taking my own life as such, but I have contemplated walking away. Going to live on a secluded island with no communication, media, news, or heartbreak. Today, I write this as a 40-year-old bachelor with no kids, and believe me, it isn't difficult for me to disappear. Besides leaving my loved ones behind, saying goodbye to society would be easy. But you see, when these moments come up for me, I feel it. It's important to feel it. It's part of the human experience to feel negative and heavy emotions. Don't dismiss them. Feel them for a moment. And then there's a voice that comes up in my head, and it says, how dare you? How dare you? With all that you've been given, how dare you not at least try in every moment, with every breath, in every way possible? How dare you not try to create a better world, to impact people around you and remind people what it means to love? How dare I not at least try? ANSA McAl. How dare we not at least try? Thank you. Wow.
Shake his hand.